Good afternoon, and thank you for joining INSA's Wednesday Wisdom featuring Misty Tullar. Before we begin, we'd like to share a video from our sponsor, GDIT.
We are GDIT, the thinkers, innovators, and mission experts, supporting some of the most complex government, defense, and intelligence projects across the country, delivering the cloud, artificial intelligence, and cyber solutions that ensure today is secure and tomorrow is smarter. Co-creating with more than 90 tech partners to move the mission forward. GDIT, delivering the art of the possible.
Now please welcome INSA's Executive Vice President, John Doyen.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for Wednesday Wisdom. We are pleased to welcome today one of our community's top leaders to the program. Before we begin, a couple of housekeeping notes. If you have questions, and we hope that you do, please submit them through the Q&A box on the right side of your screen. We will do our best to get to all your questions. Also, we are pleased to welcome members of the press to the call today, and this is a reminder that this program is on the record. And finally, we could not deliver this kind of thought leadership without the support of our partners. Now I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Victor Spahik, Vice President, Reconnaissance Programs for GDIT's Intelligence and Homeland Security Division, who will introduce our speaker. Victor, over to you.
Thank you, John. I would like to thank INSA for hosting today's conversation. They've done an incredible job these past 15 months hosting programs like today's that help us keep us engaged with the issues and importantly connected to the broader IC community. For decades, GDIT has proudly supported the NRO's critical missions. And with technology evolving at rates never before imagined, GDIT remains committed to developing solutions that support the NRO to advance the intelligence capabilities and overhead systems elemental to operations around the world. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our speaker. Misty Tullar is Director of the NRO's Business Plans and Operations Directorate. In this capacity, she is responsible for all NRO business functions, including budget management, financial control, independent cost estimating, and the study of national reconnaissance. Misty is responsible also for NRO strategic communications, including legislative liaison and public affairs. She is dual-hatted as NRO's Chief Financial Officer and is the primary NRO interface on resource-related issues with ODNI, DoD, and OMB. Previously, she served as NGA's Director of Plans and Programs, where she provided oversight for the development and execution of strategic planning, programming, acquisition and contracts, and budget and partner engagement. Misty has been a National Intelligence Resource Manager for more than 30 years, beginning her career with the Department of the Navy. Welcome, Misty Tullar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Victor, and thanks again to GDIT for supporting this program. And Misty, let me extend my welcome as well. We're so glad you could join us this afternoon for today's program. And to get the ball rolling with a lead-off question, as you know, Misty, my career was at the National Security Agency, but I worked all across the intelligence community as well, spending time at CIA and other organizations as well. And so I know you as a careerist at the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency, NGA, but you're on an assignment right now at NRO. So I'm curious, what was it like transitioning to NRO, and what's it like working at NRO, and how's the culture there, perhaps as opposed to what you experienced at NGA?
Great, great. And John, let me just say thanks. It's great to see you again today. And I want to thank INSA for having me on one of their Wednesday Wisdom programs. I was humbled to be asked to do this today, so thank you for this opportunity. To get to your question, the NRO is actually the 6th organization that I've worked for over my 34 years in the intelligence community. What a great place to work, I have to tell you. It's just been fantastic. The pinnacle of my career, truly. from an organization perspective, from the leadership, the fact that I had the opportunity to work with Director Sapp and Mr. Cavelli, and now Dr. Scalise and Dr. Mink, it's just amazing. This is a very family-friendly, mission-oriented, fast-paced, decision-making organization, which I just love. My role as the Director of Business Plans and Operations, which we'll talk about in just a second, and my role as the CFO is a great one here. I truly have the best job in the intelligence community by far. It's just wonderful. But the value that the National Reconnaissance Office places on financial management and the CFO role is key to why I'm saying all this. It's got a high priority here. My level of engagement with the leadership allows me then to be a stronger person when I am engaging them with Congress, OMB, and DNI and USDI on the executive branch. But the culture here, as you know, we're growing as an organization in terms of our own NRO workforce. So it certainly started out small in numbers, and we're still very small relative to the other IC organizations. Hence, that lends itself this family kind of atmosphere. Everybody knows everybody, and we're all rooting for each other. And given the NRO's mission, we're very lucky in the sense that everybody here understands what the mission is, and therefore understands how their contributions contribute to that overall mission. It's hard in some places to get that same level of mission linkage, if you will, to your day job, especially in a support organization like BPO. Let's face it, we do financial management, cost estimating, public affairs, congressional interaction. Those are also, if you will, support elements to the NRO's core mission. But even those folks in my organization understand how their contributions tie directly to mission. And that's all because of the NRO culture here that's kind of just been embedded within this organization for so long. So wonderful place to work, thoroughly enjoying every day that I've had here. Been here since 2017 and actually converted to NRO cadre in November 2019. So just loving every day here.
Great. Well, you did mention a number of roles. So I guess if I was counting correctly, I think you have 3 hats that you wear. You're the Director of BPO, I guess the Business Processes Office. You're also the CFO, and you're also the Career Field Manager for Financial Management. So can you tell us a little bit more about that, and especially the challenges you face in these different roles, and between them, what your priorities and your strategic goals are?
Yeah, great. Thanks, John. Absolutely. And you're right. I do wear 3 hats here. First hat is I'm the Director of the Business Plans and Operations Directorate or office within the NRO. As in that function, I oversee 5 individual offices: Congressional and Public Affairs, if you will, the Budget Office, the Finance Office, Cost Estimating, and our Center for the Study of National Reconnaissance, or basically our Historian and Archive offices. All of which do extremely great work, great leaders across, great managers and personnel across all those offices. And as the director of BPO, my strategic goal and my priority is, one, to make sure that all offices and all personnel have the resources they need to be successful. The tools, the training, the computers, you name it, physical space, all of that. Insight, the information, access to me, access to my deputy, Heidi Smith, all of that. That they're informed, they know what's going on, they understand their priorities, they understand BPO's linkage to the overall organization and kind of where we're headed as an entity within the NRO. Another priority that I have as Director of BPO is that, as a support organization, what we're called upon, we have to be the best at our role and our trade craft. So across those 5 offices, I have to ensure, once again, that I'm hiring the right folks, that they're getting the certifications and the training that they need, and that they, are always developing and enhancing themselves in whatever trade craft, that they've chosen for that. But I want to make sure that they know their role and they have all those resources then available to them. But I'm also responsible to synchronize our efforts across BPO. We need to act as one unit and with one voice. So my job, and that to me, that's all about communication, constant communication with my managers, information flow to them. I had, like I said, I mentioned previously,
And Misty has frozen for me. Hopefully she will come back in a moment. My staff is telling me it's not just me. I think she may have frozen. Well, while we work to get Misty back, why don't I do this? Why don't I go ahead and jump to our, what we usually do at the end of the program is talk a little bit about some of our upcoming INSA activities. So why don't I tackle that now, and we'll share that information with you. And we can go ahead and work to get Misty back online. So let me just pull up this information so I make sure I don't miss anything, and let you know. Let's see, we'll get this queued up here in a second. That as we start to go towards later this month, we do have some upcoming activities on the August the 9th. So the second week of August, we're going to be partnering with our media partners, Defense One, and we're going to be holding a virtual conversation on protecting critical infrastructure, improving the sharing of threat data. And that's going to be a really great program. Hope you can join us on the Defense One platform for that. And on August the 25th, we are going to be holding a special edition of Wednesday Wisdom with former DIA Director Bob Ashley, who will be our moderator, special guest moderator that day. And he'll be leading a conversation with DIA's Liz Laney and Yvette Nolte, who are National Security Fellows at Harvard's Kennedy School. And they just worked together on a paper called "Is the IC Staying Ahead of the Digital Curve?" So that's going to be a really interesting discussion. I know that Liz and Yvette had interviewed scores of national security officials with that question, and I think their results are very instructive, and they're going to have recommendations on the way ahead. And on September 13th and 14th, we hope that you'll be able to join us in person for our Intelligence and National Security Summit, which we do each year in partnership with AFCEA International. This year's program, again, it's in person. It will take place at the Gaylord National Resort and Convention Center. We have a terrific speaker lineup, including NRO Director Dr. Christopher Scalise. Very appropriate to mention that during Misty's program here. DNI Avril Haines will join us, NSA Director General Paul Nakasone, DIA Director Scott Barrier, just to name a few of the folks. You can get the full program lineup online at intelsummit.org and check out the entire series of that we have for panel discussions and plenary sessions. And finally, wanted to mention that we'll be holding our 36th William Oliver Baker Award Dinner on Saturday, September the 25th at the Omni Shoreham in Washington, D.C. And this is going to be a really great event. We're going to expect about 700 intelligence community and national security leaders to be on hand. We are going to be celebrating former PDD&I, the Honorable Sue Gordon, and it will be a very memorable evening. We hope you're able to join us. You can read about the Baker Dinner and all the full lineup of our virtual programs and other programs as well online at insaonline.org. And so that's some of our coming events. My staff is furiously working to get our NRO guest back online. I was just sent a message that is in the works, and her team and our team are working that. And while we wait, I just know that as Misty was saying, she has been around the community a lot and she appreciates NRO and all the work that they're doing there. I know from my experiences as a National Security Agency officer, we also have a very, very close relationship, as probably most in the audience know, with NRO. That's a strong partnership, and we've built that over the years. As Misty said, the NRO workforce is on the small side compared to the other big 6 IC agencies, but their budget is not on the small side compared to the other. It's very much in line with the other agencies because the satellites are on the pricey side. So the technology investment they have there is very significant, and those are we were going to have a chance to ask some questions to Misty about that when she gets back online. And we are seeing that we're still doing some tech here. I can share a little bit more information if you'd like about the upcoming breakouts that we're going to be having at the summit. I know that we're going to have panels on China and artificial intelligence and advanced technologies. And we'll have a panel discussion as well on diversity and diversity issues in the IC. I know that's going to be chaired by, I believe, Carrie Bingen will be doing that. And we're really thrilled that DNI Avril Haines will be providing the keynote for the summit. So she will be starting us off on Monday, right at the lunch hour, and with the keynote discussion, and then a fireside chat with INSA Chairman Tish Long. And as we always do, we'll also have one of the plenary sessions at the summit will be with the directors of all of the service intelligence areas. So we'll have Air Force, Navy, Army, Marines, Space Force, who have left out. I'm going to get in trouble for leaving someone out here. Coast Guard, I believe. And that will be just a really engaging to see the breadth of the activities going on with the across all the service intelligence activities. And we also have we'll also have, of course, an evening reception, our first evening of the program, and we hope you'll be able to join us. So let me check in again with my staff, and they say it's still going to be another minute or two. So why don't I tell you about last week's program? If you were able to join us each year for the last 4 years now, INSA has held the new IC, Empowering Women and Engaging Men. And this year we had a virtual format. Every day, 5 days, we had virtual programming. And each afternoon, there was an hour-long session where we met with women leaders and discussed the issues that they face as being either trailblazers or issues related to diversity or mentoring. And each of those programs have been recorded, and you can go online again at INSA Online if you've missed those and watch the recordings. In particular, I think the Day 4 event that was with Lieutenant General Mary O'Brien, the intelligence chief for the Air Force. She had a keynote address and then a really excellent question and answer session moderated with Sue Gordon. And she was so pleased with the session. I know that Lieutenant General O'Brien noted the value of critical thinking skills in reducing barriers for women and the importance of testing assumptions to interrupt bias. Just some really great material that's available as well for you to go online and read at insaonline.org.
Hey, John.
Well, good afternoon, Suzanne. How are you?
I'm well. You are doing a good job giving a briefing of what's to come.
Well, there's lots of great events, as always, with INSA, and I hope that many of our attendees will be able to join us.
Great. Well, one event, and are you hearing an echo at all?
No, I don't.
Great. One event that I also wanted to mention that we have coming up is September 30th in Colorado. We will be returning to the Colorado area, to Aurora specifically, and hosting our Colorado's intelligence community. The theme is Common Thread, and this year we're going to be focusing on resiliency. Not only resiliency following a very, very difficult and unprecedented year and a half, but also resiliency related to changes in workforce and leadership and potential for some telecommuting, some job roles. So we've already got a representative from NSA confirmed, as well as NGA, and are looking forward to that networking reception that evening of September 30th, as well as a panel discussion following our keynote, and then, of course, in INSA fashion, more networking.
Hi, John. This is the NRO. We are back on audio at least. I have Misty here with me. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I hear you loud and clear. Thank you. Misty, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, John.
Well, thanks for your perseverance to get back online with us. I know, I'm sure folks appreciate we have dry runs and we work with technology, and but sometimes it just fails us. So
yeah, I hear you. No worries, no worries. Just let me know where you want to pick up, John, or if you want to just go to the next question and kind of start with a clean slate. That works for me.
Well, we were talking about your three hats, and
okay.
One of the three hats that perhaps we could spend a little bit more time on is the Chief Financial Officer hat. And could you tell us a little bit more about, what are the roles there? I think a lot of people think of a Chief Financial Officer in a private sector sense. What does a CFO in an intelligence agency do? What are the roles there and missions?
Got it. Thanks, John. So as a CFO here at the NRO, my primary responsibility is to build, defend, and execute the NRO's budget, ensure that it's comprehensive across all of our offices and missions and functions, but more importantly, that it directly reflects the DNRO's priorities. As you know, we do this on an annual basis. We build a budget in response to all kinds of guidance and direction, and one that we build, that we know will be receptive, when it hits the hill. So we take all those facets into account, and as you know, the NRO has a broad, portfolio of acquisitions that we're balancing, and we spend, several weeks, several months, deliberating, all the priorities that we have. Certainly looking at that through the lens of the budget environment at the time, and deciding how will the NRO be most successful? How can we satisfy all the demands that are placed upon us by our partners and our users and our customers, and certainly our oversight entities, and and put forth a comprehensive, executable budget, one that will be, like I said, well received on the Hill. That is my primary role as the CFO. I also, though, have, just as important of a role to ensure that within the NRO, we have the proper financial management control environment in place, and one that we're always looking, if you will, to improve. And by that, I mean, the fiduciary responsibility I have as a CFO, but also more importantly, in the development of our financial statements, our quarterly information, and the audit that we do on an annual basis that we've been extremely successful on, at least for the last 12 years. Just want to tout our 12 consecutive, clean audits that we are very proud of here at NRO. And that comes with a very, a measured and intentionally, specific, fiscal control environment that we have. So as part of my role as CFO, it is overseeing that and ensuring that we're always improving upon that controlled environment. And then my third, role as CFO is the synchronization and the engagement that we have literally on a daily basis, sometimes hourly it seems, with our executive branch oversight, D&I, DOD, and OMB specifically, and also with Congress. That takes up a significant portion of my time. One of the things that we try to ensure here at the NRO is that we are speaking with one voice and that we're having a consistent message across all of our programs and conveying and keeping our relationships good with all those entities and ensuring that they're on board with where we're headed from a budget perspective. My biggest challenge as a CFO should be an obvious one. It's balancing all those requirements, all of our MSAs, and all the demands that are placed upon us, in a potentially challenging or budget constrained environment. That is quite frankly my biggest challenge. And how, to meet the director's priorities, be creative as much as possible within the constraints of appropriation law, obviously, but still try to drive, the budget to bring capabilities to both the IC and DOD that are in direct response to national decision maker and warfighter priorities and meet those requirements.
Great. I heard you mention the congressional affairs piece of your portfolio. So I wanted to just ask you a follow up on that a little bit. So I know that NRO, of course, you would work with the Intelligence Committee. Committees. I presume you also work with the Armed Services Committees and, of course, the Appropriations Committees. How is all of that working out for you these days as far as relationships with the committees, interest in what the NRO is doing, support that you're seeing in Congress? Can you share with us about that?
Yeah, absolutely, John. I couldn't tell you. We have a great relationship with Congress across all 6 committees. We're very fortunate at that. But we work really hard to ensure that we have those great relationships. We certainly understand the difference between executive branch and legislative branch, and we balance that accordingly. But we also try to be, once again, transparent as much as we can, with Congress and at the appropriate times and with the requisite information. But we certainly, when we do our budget rollouts, we spend a significant amount of time developing those rollouts, ensuring that we have all the right SMEs in the room. Those rollouts are a very high priority here in the NRO. You get the actual Ds and Os of the acquisition offices attending those rollouts because they're, quite frankly, the SMEs. And our job is when the Hill comes here, to hear kind of where we're headed for the next fiscal year. We want to ensure we have all the right personnel in the room, and we take those rollouts and all subsequent engagements very seriously. So we dedicate a lot of time and effort to fostering and maturing our relationships across all 6 committees.
Great. Hey, we are getting lots of questions in from the audience. So thank you first to the audience members for sticking through our technical challenges. So let's get to your questions because that's what I think you've been waiting for. And here's one that's come in from Paul Incolt. And Paul says he's delighted to hear from you. And his question is, Misty, what initiatives have you taken to improve the financial workforce at NRO, and what strengths at NRO would you like to share with the other intelligence agencies?
A couple things. Certainly, in our recruitment, we set very high standards for who we bring into the NRO, regardless of grade. We have the luxury that when we put out vacancy announcements, we get a lot of applicants, which just speaks to the organization as a whole, quite frankly. So we set a high bar for people that we bring on here. Once they've joined the family here at the NRO, we ask each individual to have certifications. and to maintain those certifications each year. We believe, though, that kind of training is necessary to keep tradecraft up and growing. We've also, in the last several years, been working quite heavily on just career development, succession planning. We now have what we call IDPs days, or individual development plan days, where people tell us what their career objectives are, and then the managers across the financial management spectrum take that input and try to figure out how we guide our folks, both career broadening within the NRO and outside of the NRO. As I mentioned, John, this is the 6th organization I've worked for across the IC, so I'm a big proponent of JDAs. I'm also a big proponent of just kind of details elsewhere in the community, whether it's a formal JDA or an informal, assignment or detail, to just grow and broaden your horizons within the financial management tradecraft. So we are taking a holistic approach to all our financial management personnel, from beginning, from recruiting people all the way through, through their retirement, planning days, to ensure that they have the optimal opportunities to grow and develop within the NRO and communicate with us their career objectives so we can help them get there.
Okay, thanks for that. I have another question here. It's in from Marcel Lettra, who's with Lockheed Martin. And Marcel asked, what is the one thing you, if you could, that you would change or improve about the intelligence community's budget process?
How much time do you have, John?
One thing, what's at the top of your list? The NRO, we build our budget in response to, as I mentioned, the director's priorities, but embedded within that, we build our capabilities in response to U.S. requirements, but also in response to adversary capabilities. And in that vein, what we're seeing is the adversaries that we are most concerned about are constantly changing. How they operate in space, the capabilities that they're sending into space. And so we are trying to be as responsive and flexible in our programs and capabilities that we're using to defend this nation. Sometimes the bureaucracy of the budget and the decisions that are made in the budget cycle are not as flexible as, believe it or not, the threats that we're trying to counter. And sometimes that we need to sort of step back and remember the budget process is a mechanism to facilitate the capabilities to support the nation, not be so rigid as to be its own control gate or obstacle. And I think that's forgotten sometimes. So that's my biggest, if you will, if I was queen for the day and what I could change, that's what I would change. Good answer. Thinking about how, building your budgets and your strategy for what NRO needs to deliver. We have a question here from Robert Milford, and he asked, how does the NRO intend to integrate commercial satellite service providers into its overall strategy for delivering services?
John, I'd rather take that question for the record and maybe get back to you on that one, because we're right in the middle of some ongoing dialogue with regard to commercial. So I'd rather just take that one for the record, if you don't mind.
Okay. Fair enough. Another question we have also touches on commercial imagery, but let me see. It's a little bit more about the NRO-NGA partnership. It comes from Director Clapper. And he says, very proud of you, Misty, and your great career. He's interested in your view of the NRO partnership with NGA with respect to commercial imagery.
Right. So I would say, and good to hear you, Director Clapper, via John. We have a great partnership with NGA. This relationship has been maturing over the past several years with respect to this topic. And I think we're in a really good spot right now with NGA.
Okay. We have another question in from Abel Vandergrift, who's with Authenticate, and he has an open source related question, and he his question is, to the extent you can discuss it, what role does open source intelligence play in supporting the NRO's mission?
So open source, not a focus area, for the NRO. I would actually, John, punt that question to some of the other IC elements. We don't do analysis here, at the NRO. So I'm trying to think about. I hate to just keep punting, on some of these questions, but that question not really relevant, for us. We respond to other IC element requirements, specifically NGA and NSA. So it's not a real relevant topic for us.
Okay. Let me get back to a question then about some of the funding issues. As we know, NRO, you have at least two funding streams. You've got the coming in from the military intelligence budget and also from the National Intelligence Program, or the MIP and the NIP. So as you build out your budget, you've got to factor in these two different DoD controlled, mostly, and IC controlled funding streams. What are the rules of the road that you use as you build out a budget with these two different funding categories?
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks for the question. Yeah, I mean, sometimes these funding, if you will, categories or buckets can be very challenging. I will tell you, though, that when the NRO builds its budget, regardless of whether it's NIP or MIP that we're talking about, we take a holistic view. We don't make decisions solely myopic to that, if you will, funding category. We always look at our programs holistically and think about the implications, even second and third order effects of making decisions in one bucket versus another. We definitely, as we're building our budgets, and certainly, and once again, even in defense and execution of that across the whole PPBE spectrum, we look at the role that each NRO program plays in the strategic outcomes for both DoD, IC. We balance that against some of the constraints, such as cost shares that we have, but we decide priorities holistically. So we work within those confines. We know them. We're very familiar with them. We know the lanes of the road for MIP. We know the dollars that the department has invested in our programs are obviously for warfighter specific requirements. We get that. And then on the national side, we have a little more flexibility in terms of just the expanse of the funding that's within that category. But we work both holistically. And we respond in that manner as well.
Okay. Hey, we have another back to audience question from James Yoker, who's with BAE Systems. And he asked, if you have a view on this, what's the most effective process for getting emerging technology innovations into the pipeline for evaluation and adoption at NRO?
Oh, well, within our AS&T Directorate, this is led by Dr. Susan Durham. She has, I believe, an annual call, if you will, called the Director's Innovation Initiative, or DII. I think it's like 70 different vendors, if I have the number correct, just last year were chosen for this DII program. You name it in terms of the range of dollar values that each vendor received, depending on their proposal and which area they were selected to pursue. But the DII is the easiest way, for lack of a better word, for a new vendor or a small vendor or someone kind of in the R&T area to enter into the NRO. I believe we have information on some of our social media channels about the DII if folks are interested and want to look at it there.
Mm-hmm. Hey, social media takes me to another audience question. It's a good segue to this from John Denice, and he asked, as the leader of congressional and public affairs, what is your vision for the NRO improving its interactions and communications outside the NRO, and also for using more technology for strategic communications and public affairs?
Well, I mean, starting with me right here, I mean, these kind of events, I would say even several years ago, the NRO wouldn't even think about, doing. So even today, and certainly the one Dr. Scalise had, a couple weeks ago, are just small indicators of where we'd like to head in a more strategic picture. We definitely want to get our name and our brand out there to folks. We think that once you learn about what the NRO does, you're hooked. And certainly if we can get you in the door, we're going to do our best to keep you. But we are, modernizing, our communication, efforts, and certainly trying to make it, more visual and just get out there faster and be more engaging with a broader with a broader audience. The NRO has a history of just kind of sitting out here in Chantilly and being okay, kind of flying under the radar. We're changing that where we can, John. Granted, we're still limited in a number of areas, but certainly where we can promote ourselves, we want to do so. If nothing else, for workforce recruitment, that we believe will pay dividends in and of itself.
Great. We've been getting a couple questions in about an issue that I think everyone in America is familiar with these days, supply chain and supply chain shortages. And the question is from Elizabeth Frey, and she asks, how does the NRO ensure a robust supply chain?
Well, I would say, pre-COVID, we had several mechanisms in place. I really can't get into a lot of them, but I will tell you the pandemic has affected us like it has a lot of other industries. I'll say like the housing industry or the building construction industry. We're facing similar challenges just in shortages in terms of raw materials and things like that. We certainly have a lot of processes in place. Like I said, COVID aside, on supply chain, we have a lot of rules and guidelines that we have been following for many years, and certainly lessons learned and best practices. But COVID aside, that's been the latest, I'll say, wrench into our supply chain. But I will tell you, we're being impacted like a lot of other industries.
Okay. Hey, we have another question in here. It's from Andy Kirby. And he's saying, what is the best way if you're a non-traditional NRO performer, but you have some advanced technology offerings, what's the best way to get insights on NRO's requirements?
That's a tough one. We talked about the DII, for vendors. This just sounds like a slightly different question than that. John, I'll have to get back to you on that one. I guess it depends on the vendor, depends on the status of the vendor, depends on the security level of the vendor, depends on, whether they've done prior work or engagement with the NRO or anybody else within the IC. So there's a number of factors that I hate to just give a general answer to that because it really just does depend on the vendor itself and kind of their overall status or previous engagements with the IC. But maybe if we have some more specific information on that, we can provide you a better answer.
Okay. Or I presume NRO must have some sort of business outreach activity or office. Would that be a place somebody could go to?
Well, I would just have them contact Public Affairs, John, and we'll make sure that, once again, if we have more specificity on the question, that we'll direct them to the right place.
Okay. We are just about at the end of our time. Let me see if I can get one more question here. And I know that we often get a lot of college students that join us. And so I'll ask you, what advice would you give, especially a college student who's looking to enter the financial management world of the intelligence community?
Well, John, there's a long-standing joke, right? There's only two types of decisions in this world, budget decisions and the ones that don't matter. So, based on that, I would tell you that, being in financial management is where it's at. That's where the rubber meets the road in terms of translating strategic priorities into actionable programs. I said at the beginning of this session here, I have the best job, not only in the NRO, but in the IC because of the opportunities that I have. And I would say for financial management personnel, the opportunities are endless. All government agencies need financial management personnel. Your ability to grow up within an organization in terms of that career field, never had a glass ceiling for me personally as I've been maturing throughout my career, but your ability to move across government and certainly within the IC, the options are endless. It is a challenging, it is a valued part of an organization, and the things that you learn, and always opportunities to learn, always opportunities to grow, because everybody does it differently. And even within the NRO, our offices do it slightly differently. And our folks here, as we mentioned before, in terms of career development, we want to move folks between offices, not because they learn other missions that the NRO does, but each office handles their financial management just slightly different. So they get a broad, swath of experience. And then certainly if you translate that across IC agencies, oh my gosh, I mean, now you've kind of got the keys of the kingdom here in terms of really understanding what the IC does. And most CFOs, have, the privilege of working with their senior leaderships all the way down, to the, GG, 12s and below grades, to help nurture and mentor them. So you really get the whole swath of the organization in terms of your ability to make impacts.
Sounds like I made the wrong career choice, and I should have been in the CFO business.
Hey, John.
Anyhow, let me ask you, we're out of time. Any closing thoughts for us today, Misty?
No, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys. So sorry about the technical hiccups that we had that kind of interrupted our flow here. But I really appreciate, INSA reaching out to me as a financial management personnel to hear about our perspectives. We're kind of overlooked, compared to some other trade crafts or, kind of jobs within the IC. So I really appreciate, the spotlight you've given me this afternoon.
Great. Well, thank you for joining us and for all of your thoughtful insights. And for everyone who joined us online and watched online today, thank you so much for taking time to join us. When the webinar ends in a few moments, there will be a short survey that pops up. Please take a few moments to complete it and let us know how we did. And that's it for today. I want to thank you again and wish everyone a safe, healthy, wonderful afternoon. Thank you.